Your friend is here. My mother's voice traveled up the stairs at exactly 7:12 on Monday morning. One word nearly ended my relationship. Friend. Technically, Julian had been my boyfriend for only a few days. We had not signed documents. There was no ceremony. No one had presented us with matching jackets. Still, after confessing our feelings and sharing a real kiss in Julian's car only a few nights earlier, friend felt painfully inaccurate. I stared at my bedroom door. Then at my reflection. My hair looked like I had spent the night fighting an electrical outlet. One side of my face carried a perfect pillow crease. I was also wearing an old music camp shirt that read "Find Your Voice," which felt judgmental considering I had temporarily lost mine. From downstairs, Mom called again. Eric. Julian brought coffee. Of course he had. My boyfriend arrived looking polished before sunrise while I looked like a witness describing a mysterious forest incident. I pulled on a hoodie and hurried downstairs. Julian sat at the kitchen table beside a plate of pancakes, dressed in a dark sweater and pressed trousers. His hair was perfect. His posture was perfect. His expression became significantly less perfect when he saw me. His eyes moved from my hair to my shirt, then back to my face. Good morning. I pointed at him. Don't. The corner of his mouth lifted. I didn't say anything. Your face did. Mom placed another plate on the table. Sit down. Your friend came early, so I made extra. Julian's hand paused halfway toward his coffee. I froze beside the chair. Friend. Again. Mom glanced between us. Is something wrong? No, Julian and I answered at exactly the same time. That was probably suspicious. I dropped into the seat across from him and focused intensely on my pancakes. Maybe if I stared hard enough, they would provide emotional guidance. They did not. Julian calmly added syrup to his plate. Although the faint color rising near his ears suggested he was not nearly as unaffected as he wanted everyone to believe. Mom turned toward the stove. Under the table, Julian's shoe nudged mine. I looked up. His expression remained composed, but his eyes held quiet. Amusement. Breathe. I narrowed my eyes. I am breathing. Not convincingly. No one is being convincing right now. Mom looked over her shoulder. What are you two whispering about? I nearly inhaled an entire piece of pancake. Julian reached for his coffee with insulting elegance. Eric believes breakfast is emotionally complicated. Mom nodded like this explained everything. That sounds like Eric. I kicked Julian lightly beneath the table. He kicked me back. Something warm settled in my chest. We were still learning how to be this new version of ourselves. Boyfriends. A word I could barely think without feeling nervous and ridiculously happy. For now, Mom still called Julian my friend. But beneath the table, his foot stayed beside mine. And neither of us moved away. By the time Julian and I reached his car, I had developed a plan. Not a good plan, but a plan with numbered rules, which made it feel official. Julian unlocked the passenger door and glanced at me over the roof. You look concerned. I am thinking. That explains the smoke. I opened the door with more force than necessary. This is serious. Julian settled behind the wheel, adjusted the mirror, and waited with the patient expression of someone preparing to hear a presentation from a nervous middle school student. I placed my coffee in the cup holder and lifted one finger. Rule 1. At school, we act normal. Julian started the engine. We have never acted normal. Fine. We act like our usual kind of abnormal. He pulled away from the curb, his mouth curving slightly. Very specific. Rule 2. No staring at each other during class. Julian looked at me. I pointed toward the windshield. You are already breaking it. I am checking whether you are serious. I have never been more serious. That was a lie. I had once spent 20 minutes explaining why our music club needed a fog machine. Julian stopped at a red light. Anything else? Rule 3. We do not sit together at lunch every day. We rarely sit together at lunch. Exactly. We preserve that tradition. His fingers tapped once against the steering wheel. Eric, are you worried people will find out? The question removed every joke from my mouth. Outside the window, familiar houses passed beneath pale morning sunlight. Students walked toward Westbridge carrying backpacks and regretting their life choices. I watched them instead of Julian. I am not ashamed. I know. I just do not want everyone turning it into a big thing before we understand what we are doing. Julian's expression softened. Then we take our time. Relief settled through me so quickly that I immediately ruined the moment. Good. Rule 4. Maya can never know. Julian parked near the music building and turned off the engine. Maya will know by lunch. She will not. She noticed when I changed shampoo. That woman is a public safety concern. We walked toward the entrance separately, not suspiciously separately, just far enough apart to look like two people who had definitely not kissed in Julian's car only a few nights earlier. The plan survived for 6 minutes. In first period, Julian placed a caramel latte on my desk before taking his seat across the room. Maya looked at the drink, then at Julian, then at me. I lifted the cup carefully. He owed me money. Julian opened his notebook without looking up. I did not. Maya's eyes narrowed. At lunch, Selena took the empty chair beside Ben, leaving only one seat available. Beside Julian. I remained standing. Selena smiled sweetly. Problem? No. I enjoy eating vertically. Julian reached over, pulled out the chair, and waited. I sat down while Maya watched us with the focus of a detective examining a suspicious footprint. Later, during music club, Julian stepped behind me and adjusted the collar of my shirt before rehearsal. His fingers barely touched the fabric. My entire brain forgot how shirts worked. You are crooked. I was born this way. His eyes warmed with quiet amusement. Across the room, Maya slowly lowered her sheet music. Julian stepped away. I stared at the floor. By the end of the day, we had broken every rule except the one about telling people. And Maya was definitely going to know by lunch tomorrow. By Tuesday morning, Maya had become terrifyingly observant. With the final spring showcase approaching, Music Club had added short rehearsals every afternoon. This gave Maya significantly more time to observe us, which was unfortunate for everyone involved. Not normal observant. Detective in a crime documentary observant. She stood beside my locker with a notebook pressed against her chest, watching me arrange 3 pencils with the focus of someone waiting for a confession. I closed the locker slowly. Why are you looking at me like that? Maya tilted her head. Like what? Like you found a receipt in my trash. Her eyes moved past me toward the end of the hallway. Julian was speaking with one of his teachers. He looked calm, polished, and completely unaware that Maya had apparently dedicated her morning to destroying our peace. Then Julian glanced up. His eyes found mine immediately. I looked away so fast that my shoulder bumped the locker. Maya opened her notebook. Interesting. I stared at the page. Did you just write something? No, you are holding a pen. I enjoy holding office supplies. She walked away before I could respond. That should have been the end of it. It was not. At lunch, Maya sat across from Julian and placed a single caramel candy beside his tray. Julian looked at it, then at her. What is this? A social experiment. Julian folded his hands on the table. I am concerned by how comfortable you are saying that. Maya pushed the candy toward him. Do you like caramel? Julian glanced at me for less than a second. That was enough. Maya wrote something in her notebook. I leaned forward. This is harassment. This is science. Selena covered a smile with her napkin. Ben kept eating, although his eyes carried the quiet amusement of someone enjoying a show without admitting it. Maya turned toward me. Eric, what is Julian's coffee order? I laughed too loudly. How would I know? Julian lifted one eyebrow. You corrected the barista yesterday. That was community service. What did he order? Maya's pen hovered above the page. I looked at Julian. Julian looked at me. Ben looked at both of us. Selena looked delighted. I cleared my throat. Medium cold brew. 1 pump vanilla. Light cream. Silence settled over the table. Maya wrote 3 full lines. I pointed at Julian. He has a predictable personality. Julian leaned back in his chair. You know my coffee order, but you forgot your own locker combination last week. That locker is emotionally manipulative. After lunch, Maya followed us to music club. She rearranged the chairs before rehearsal, placing mine directly beside Julian's. I moved my chair 2 feet away. Selena quietly moved it back. I stared at her. She smiled with unbearable innocence. During warm-ups, Julian reached across the space between us and removed a tiny piece of lint from my shoulder. Maya stopped singing. The entire row slowly noticed. Julian withdrew his hand and looked straight ahead. I focused on the sheet music, although every note had suddenly become meaningless. After rehearsal, Maya blocked the doorway. Her notebook was now filled with arrows, circles, and what appeared to be a timeline. You two are hiding something. Julian remained perfectly composed. I, unfortunately, remained much less composed. I pointed toward the notebook. That looks unstable. Maya narrowed her eyes. I will figure it out. Julian stepped around her, his expression calm. You probably will. I followed him into the hallway and whispered through clenched teeth. Why would you encourage her? Julian glanced at me, quiet amusement brightening his face. Because this is the happiest she has looked all semester. Behind us, Maya called out. I heard that. Julian kept walking. I hurried beside him, trying not to smile. Our secret was safe. Probably. Maybe. For approximately 12 more hours. By Wednesday, Julian and I had developed a routine. It was subtle, completely invisible, except to anyone with functioning eyes. He still picked me up every morning, even though my car had been repaired 2 days earlier. When I mentioned that fact, Julian adjusted the temperature inside his car and kept his attention on the road. Your car makes a concerning sound. It has character. It sounds like it is apologizing. That is because you hurt its feelings. Julian's mouth curved slightly. He handed me a caramel latte without looking over. I accepted it with equal subtlety. Neither of us mentioned that he had remembered the exact amount of foam I liked. That would have been emotionally dangerous before 8 in the morning. At school, I started carrying an extra tube of caramel lip balm in my backpack. Not for Julian. Obviously, it was for emergencies involving unexpectedly dry lips and people who enjoyed caramel. This had nothing to do with the fact that Julian had borrowed mine once and quietly kept it for the entire afternoon. During music club, I placed the new tube beside his sheet music. Julian looked down at it, then at me. You bought this for me. I bought 2 by accident. You went to a store, selected the same flavor, and accidentally paid for it twice. Retail spaces are confusing. His gaze softened in that quiet way that always made my thoughts lose their balance. Thank you. I turned toward the piano before my face could become evidence. You are welcome. Do not make it emotional. Later, while everyone prepared for rehearsal, Julian stepped behind me and straightened my collar. I looked at our reflection in the dark window of the choir room. His expression was focused. His fingers carefully adjusted the fabric, making the smallest movements possible. My heartbeat behaved like it had received terrible instructions. You know, most people just tell someone when their shirt looks bad. Most people would not trust you to fix it. That is offensive. That is experience. His hand stayed near my shoulders for 1 extra second. Neither of us moved. Then Maya entered the room. Julian stepped away so quickly that the chair beside him shifted. Maya stopped in the doorway. Her eyes moved between us. I pointed at my collar. Wardrobe emergency. Of course. She wrote something in her notebook. After rehearsal, Julian had to stay for an academic meeting. I waited outside the main building, sitting on a low brick wall beneath the parking lot lights. When he finally appeared 40 minutes later, he slowed. What are you doing here? I shrugged. Existing near a building. You have been existing here for 40 minutes? I am very committed. Julian stopped in front of me. The tiredness around his eyes softened. You could have gone home. I know. The answer stayed between us. Simple. Honest. Julian sat beside me, close enough for our shoulders to touch. For once, neither of us filled the silence with jokes or rules. A cold breeze moved through the parking lot. Julian gently leaned his head against mine. I looked straight ahead, trying not to smile too much. Being someone's boyfriend was strange. It was not one dramatic moment. It was coffee in the morning, a straightened collar, waiting 40 minutes beneath parking lot lights. Small choices that quietly became a promise. And every day, I found myself choosing Julian again. By Thursday afternoon, keeping our relationship secret had become less romantic and more exhausting. Mostly because Maya had stopped pretending she was investigating. She was now openly waiting for us to fail. Music club rehearsal had just ended when she dropped into the chair across from me and folded her arms. Julian stood near the piano, sorting sheet music with the kind of calm concentration that made everyone else look disorganized by comparison. Maya followed my gaze. Then she smiled. I immediately disliked that smile. So, she began, drawing the word out far too long. Are you and Julian dating? My brain stopped. Not slowed down. Stopped. Every sensible answer disappeared, leaving only panic and the terrible instinct to turn everything into a joke. I laughed too loudly. Julian and me? I would rather date the piano. The room went quiet for half a second. Then Tyler laughed. Selena covered her mouth, although her expression looked more surprised than amused. Maya glanced toward Julian. I did too. He was still holding the sheet music. Still standing perfectly straight. Still wearing a small, polite smile. But it was not the smile he gave me in the car. It was not the quiet one that appeared when I remembered his coffee order or waited for him after a meeting. This smile belonged to the version of Julian who never let anyone know they had reached him. He placed the music into a folder. The piano is very dependable. His voice remained light. That somehow made everything worse. I opened my mouth. Nothing useful came out. Julian closed the folder and turned toward Ben. I will send you the revised arrangement. Tonight. Ben studied him for a moment before nodding. Julian collected his bag and walked toward the door. Usually, he waited for me. That afternoon, he did not even look back. I followed him into the hallway. Julian. He kept walking. I hurried beside him. The piano comment was not serious. I know. It was a panic joke. I know. That means it was not legally meaningful. Julian stopped near the trophy case. The hallway lights reflected against the glass behind him, making his expression harder to read. I told you that we could take our time. We can. I told you that I understood why you were not ready. I know. His fingers tightened around the strap of his bag. But I did not expect you to make loving me sound humiliating. Every joke waiting in my mouth disappeared. Students moved around us, laughing and talking as they headed toward the parking lot. Somehow, the hallway still felt completely silent. I am not embarrassed by you. Julian looked at me carefully. Then why was that the first thing you wanted everyone to believe? The question landed exactly where it should have. I looked down at the floor. Because the truth was ugly. I had been so afraid of everyone seeing something real that I had turned Julian into the joke before anyone else could. I was scared. Julian's expression softened slightly, but the hurt remained. So was I. I finally met his eyes. I am sorry. Not the kind of sorry where I make another joke and hope you forget. I mean it. Julian remained quiet. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You are not something I regret. You are not something I am ashamed of. You are probably the best thing that has happened to me this year, which is deeply annoying because you already have enough confidence. A small crack appeared in Julian's perfect expression. Not quite a smile, but close. I held on to it. I do not know how to do this yet, but I do know I do not want to make you feel hidden. Julian glanced toward the emptying hallway. Then we need to talk about what happens next. My stomach tightened. But this time, I did not run from the feeling. I nodded. Okay. And for once, the word was not a joke. Julian did not lead me toward the parking lot. Instead, he turned back toward the auditorium. That was how I knew the conversation was serious. The auditorium was empty. The stage lights turned off except for one soft bulb above the piano. Julian placed his bag on the front row seat and stood near the edge of the stage. I stayed in the aisle. The distance between us felt much larger than 10 feet. Julian looked down at his hands. I do not need everyone to know tomorrow. I know. I do not need a public announcement. I was not planning one. I do not own a microphone powerful enough. His eyes lifted toward me. Usually, that would have earned a smile. This time, it did not. I moved closer. I am sorry. Julian drew in a slow breath. I know you are. There was no anger in his voice. That almost made it worse. He sat on the edge of the stage, shoulders slightly curved beneath his sweater. Julian rarely looked uncertain. Even when he was nervous, he carried himself like he had already reviewed every possible outcome. Now he looked tired. I am not afraid of my unknowing. I sat beside him, leaving a few inches between us. She is terrifying, but fair. I am not afraid of Selena, Ben, or Tyler either. His fingers tightened together. It is my family. The words settled into the quiet auditorium. I turned toward him. Julian stared at the empty rows of seats. My parents have always had expectations. Good grades. Good schools. Good choices. Nothing dramatic. Nothing unpredictable. That sounds exhausting. It is efficient. That is not the same thing. A faint smile touched his face, then disappeared. My father has already planned where I should go to college. My mother keeps information about internships I have not applied for. They do not control every part of my life, but they notice everything. I understood immediately. Julian was not afraid they would stop loving him. He was afraid they would look at him differently. Maybe with disappointment. Maybe with concern. Maybe like he had stepped outside a version of his life that everyone else had already approved. He glanced at me. You are the first important decision I have made without knowing whether they would understand. For once, I had no joke ready. I reached across the space between us and rested my hand beside his. Not touching, just close. You do not have to tell them yet. Julian's eyes moved to my hand. I do not want to hide you forever. You are not hiding me. You are figuring things out. That sounds generous. It is. I am becoming emotionally mature. His mouth finally curved. Do not ruin it. I was doing very well. Julian looked at me for a long moment. I do not want you to think I am ashamed. I do not. I was hurt today, but not because you refused to tell Maya. I nodded slowly. You were hurt because I made it sound like being with you was something ridiculous. Yes. I let the truth sit between us. Then I moved my hand the last few inches and linked my fingers with his. I will not do that again. Julian looked down at our joined hands. We should start somewhere small. With one person? With our friends. My stomach tightened. Then I pictured Maya with her notebook, Selena pretending not to notice everything, Ben quietly understanding before the rest of us, and Tyler somehow taking credit. I exhaled. Tomorrow after rehearsal? Julian squeezed my hand once. Tomorrow after rehearsal. I leaned back against the stage. Should we prepare a speech? No, I could make note cards. Absolutely not. A visual presentation? Julian finally laughed. The sound echoed softly through the empty auditorium. The conversation had not fixed everything. But when we left, Julian walked beside me. And this time, neither of us pretended the space between us was necessary. By Friday afternoon, I had prepared 12 different ways to tell our friends. All 12 were terrible. The first sounded like a school announcement. The second sounded like a confession before sentencing. The third included the phrase, after careful consideration, which Julian informed me made our relationship sound like a rejected business proposal. We sat in his car outside Westbridge, 15 minutes before music club rehearsal. My note cards rested on my lap. Julian looked at them with visible concern. You made actual cards. I needed structure. You wrote them in different colors. That is called organization. That is called panic with office supplies. I flipped to the blue card. This version is simple. We stand in front of everyone. I explain the situation, and then you confirm my statement. Julian leaned closer and read the first line. Dear members of the Westbridge Music Club, it establishes the audience. We know the audience. Not everyone respects structure. Julian took the cards from my hands and placed them in the glove compartment. I stared at him. You just removed my emotional support materials. You were about to give our friends a quarterly report. That report had excellent transitions. Julian's expression softened. We do not need a speech. Easy for him to say. Julian could walk into any room, stand perfectly still, and somehow make people listen. I could walk into an empty room and accidentally knock over a chair. What if I forget the words? You only need 4. I counted on my fingers. Julian is my boyfriend. His eyes warmed. Yes. The words should not have felt that difficult. I had thought them hundreds of times since Saturday night. I had whispered them to myself while brushing my teeth. I had nearly written them in the margins of my history notes. Still, saying them in front of our friends felt different. It made everything real beyond the two of us. Julian reached across the center console and turned my hand palm up. His thumb moved once across my knuckles. If you cannot say it, I will. I looked at him. He was nervous too. It showed only in the slight tension near his mouth and the way his other hand rested too carefully against the steering wheel. You do not have to carry the whole thing. I know. I mean it. Yesterday, you told me I was the first decision you made without knowing what your family would think. His gaze dropped to our joined hands. I remember. So today, we make this decision together. Julian squeezed my fingers. Together. We entered rehearsal separately out of habit. Then Julian paused near the choir room door and waited for me to catch up. Inside, Maya sat beside Selena with her notebook open. Ben adjusted the keyboard. Tyler was attempting to balance a drumstick on his nose despite not being a drummer. Everything looked normal. That made it worse. Rehearsal passed in a blur of warm-ups, harmonies, and Julian's shoulder brushing mine whenever we shared the same sheet music. Each time I looked toward the clock, the hands seemed to move faster. When the final song ended, Maya immediately closed her folder and stood. Julian looked at me. This was the moment. I opened my mouth. Nothing happened. Maya reached for her bag. Wait. My voice came out louder than intended. Everyone stopped. Maya slowly turned around. Selena's expression became very still. Ben rested his hands on the keyboard. Tyler lowered the drumstick. I took one breath. Then another. We need to tell you something. Julian's hand brushed mine behind the music stand, steady and quiet, like he was reminding me I was not standing there alone. The room became so quiet that I could hear the old wall clock ticking above the door. That felt unnecessary. Maya slowly set her bag back on the chair. Selena folded her hands over her folder, already wearing the expression of someone trying very hard not to smile. Ben leaned against the keyboard. Tyler looked between Julian and me. Are you leaving music club? No. Did Julian finally admit my arrangement was better? Julian's eyebrows lifted. No, Tyler nodded thoughtfully. Then I am out of ideas. Beside me, Julian stayed close behind the music stand. Not touching this time. Just close enough for me to remember that I was not doing this alone. I looked at him. For the first time all week, Julian did not look calm. His shoulders remained straight, but there was tension around his eyes. He had offered to speak for both of us. He would have, too. That was exactly why I needed to do it. I turned back toward our friends. Before Maya builds a full investigation board and starts connecting photographs with red string, Maya narrowed her eyes. I already bought the string. Of course you did. A few people laughed. My chest loosened just enough for the truth to come out. Julian is my boyfriend. The sentence landed softly. No dramatic music. No thunder. Just 4 words in a familiar choir room. For 2 full seconds, nobody moved. Then Maya threw both hands into the air. I knew it. Her voice echoed through the room. I knew it from the green peppercorn incident. I blinked. The what? When Julian removed green peppercorn from your food without checking whether you wanted him to. Julian glanced at me. You dislike green peppercorn. That is not the point. Maya grabbed her notebook and opened it to a page filled with dates, arrows, and several question marks. I also had the caramel evidence, the suspicious coffee delivery, the collar adjustment, and the 40-minute parking lot wait. I stared at the page. You tracked the parking lot wait? I am thorough. Selena rose from her chair and walked toward us. Her smile softened as she looked between Julian and me. I am happy for both of you. Then she wrapped her arms around me before I could prepare emotionally. I returned the hug with one arm and tried to maintain dignity. I appreciate the support. I do not appreciate how unsurprised you look. Selena stepped back. You two have spent months pretending every argument was about me. That was convincing. It was exhausting. Ben approached Julian and held out his hand. Julian accepted it, still looking slightly uncertain. Ben's expression remained calm. Good choice. Julian's shoulders finally relaxed. Thank you. Tyler pointed toward himself. Does this mean I helped? Everyone turned toward him. He spread his hands. I left Eric alone after Selena's party. Julian found him. Technically, I created the opportunity. I pointed at him. Do not turn my relationship into your personal achievement. Tyler placed one hand over his heart. I am only asking for appropriate recognition. Maya closed her notebook with visible satisfaction. So how long? 6 days. Her face fell. You made me investigate for 6 days? I was protecting our privacy. You were wasting my talent. Julian finally reached for my hand in full view of everyone. His fingers settled between mine. Nobody stared. Nobody looked uncomfortable. Maya only smiled like she had solved the greatest mystery of her life. The fear I had carried all week suddenly felt much smaller. Julian looked at me, quiet relief. Warming his expression, I squeezed his hand. For the first time, calling him my boyfriend did not feel frightening. It felt true. By the following Tuesday, the strangest part about telling our friends was how little had changed. Maya still stole one of my fries at lunch. Tyler still claimed he deserved credit for our relationship. Ben still looked exhausted by all of us. The only real difference was that Julian sat beside me without pretending the empty chair had happened by accident. He placed his tray on the table and glanced at the space between us. You moved your chair closer. I looked down. Our chairs were nearly touching. That is a serious accusation. Julian sat and calmly opened his drink. There is evidence. Maya has infected you. Across the table, Maya lifted her notebook. I prefer the term educated. I ignored her and reached for my sandwich. A few minutes later, Julian moved his hand beneath the table and rested it beside mine. Not holding it. Just there. The contact was small enough that nobody else needed to notice. Maya noticed. Of course she did. Her eyes dropped beneath the table, then slowly lifted toward us. I pointed my sandwich at her. Do not. She smiled and returned to her lunch. Music club felt different too. Before, Julian and I had spent most rehearsals standing on opposite sides of the room, Pretending competition required at least 15 feet of distance. Now, when Ben handed us the same arrangement, Julian simply moved beside me. Our shoulders touched while we read the music. I tried to focus on the notes. Julian glanced at my page. You are holding it upside down. I am exploring a new technique. That technique will not help. Art requires courage. Art requires reading. From the piano, Ben sighed. Can both of you require silence? We obeyed for almost 30 seconds. After rehearsal, I dropped into one of the auditorium seats while Julian helped Ben organize the music folders. I had been tired all day, and the quiet room made my eyes feel heavy. When Julian finally sat beside me, I leaned my head against his shoulder before thinking about it. For 1 second, I almost moved away. Then I remembered that everyone knew. Julian adjusted slightly, making it easier for me to rest there. Across the aisle, Tyler pointed at us. This is because of me. I closed my eyes. I am going to remove you from the story. You cannot erase history. Maya grabbed his sleeve and pulled him toward the exit. Let them have one peaceful moment. Tyler allowed himself to be dragged away. I still expect acknowledgement. When the room finally emptied, Selena remained near the stage. She watched Julian carry the last stack of folders into the storage room, then took the seat in front of me. Her smile was gentle. You look happy. The simple statement made me sit up. I was happy before. You were loud before. That is not the same thing. I know. She glanced toward the storage room. For months, I had imagined conversations with Selena. In every version, I had tried to impress her. Now, sitting across from her, I felt no need to perform. She folded her arms over the back of the chair. You and Julian spent so much time trying to make me notice both of you. I groaned. Please do not finish that sentence. Her smile widened. But neither of you ever stopped noticing each other. I looked toward the storage room. Julian appeared in the doorway and immediately found me with his eyes. Selena stood. I am glad you finally figured it out. When Julian returned, he sat beside me and offered his hand. This time, I took it without checking who might be watching. The world had not changed after we told our friends. Maybe that was the best part. We had only stopped pretending. Then Julian's phone lit up beside us with one word on the screen. Mom. And the easy part ended. The week after we told our friends, Julian started letting go of small pieces of caution. Then his mother called. We were sitting in his car after rehearsal, sharing fries from a paper bag while rain tapped softly against the windshield. Julian had one hand around his phone and the other resting beside mine on the center console. For once, neither of us was pretending that our hands had ended up close by accident. Then the screen lit up. Mom. Julian straightened before answering. Hello, Mother. His voice changed immediately. Not dramatically. Julian never did anything dramatically unless I was involved. But the warmth disappeared, replaced by something polished and careful. I ate another fry and looked through the windshield. Yes, the final performance is this Friday. A pause. Yes, I am prepared. Another pause. Julian glanced toward me. His fingers moved away from mine. My hand remained on the console for 1 second too long before I pulled it back and reached into the bag. No, I will not be performing alone. Eric and I have a duet. His mother responded with something I could not hear. Julian's eyes lowered. Eric is a friend from music club. The fry in my hand suddenly became extremely interesting. Friend. There was that word again. I knew why he used it. I knew his family did not know yet. I knew we had agreed to take our time. Knowing something did not make it hurt less. Julian ended the call a minute later and placed the phone face down. My parents are coming to the performance. That is great. My voice sounded convincing if nobody listened closely. Julian watched me. You do not sound pleased. I am pleased. I love audiences. They are very useful during performances. Eric. I folded the top of the paper bag twice. Then a third time. You call me your friend. The air inside the car shifted. Julian's expression tightened. They do not know yet. I know. I was not trying to hurt you. I know that too. He reached toward my hand. I moved to place the fries on the dashboard, pretending not to notice. Julian let his hand fall. The next few days felt different. At school, nothing changed. Julian still sat beside me at lunch. He still waited after class. He still smiled at my terrible jokes, then pretended he had not. But whenever unfamiliar students passed us in the hallway, his hand moved away from mine. When teachers entered the choir room, he stepped farther back. When his mother called after rehearsal, I became Eric from music club again. By Wednesday afternoon, I stood beside him near the piano while he adjusted our duet arrangement. I watched his careful notes appear across the page. You moved the final harmony. It sounds stronger this way. You mean safer. Julian's pencil stopped. His eyes lifted toward me. We are discussing music. Are we? A quiet breath left him. My family will be there, Eric. I know. I need time. I looked at the space he had placed between us. Then I looked at Julian. For the first time since we started dating, I wondered whether time was the only thing he needed. Or whether, outside empty auditoriums and familiar lunch tables, choosing me still felt like too much. By Friday evening, the Westbridge Auditorium looked almost beautiful. Julian and I had not resolved the tension from Wednesday. We had only agreed to get through the performance first and talk afterward, which meant we were being polite. Extremely polite. The kind of polite that made every sentence feel like it was wearing formal clothes. That was suspicious. Normally, it smelled faintly like dust, old curtains, and the emotional remains of previous school productions. But under the warm stage lights, with rows of families filling the seats and the piano polished until it reflected everything, the room felt different. Important. Terrifying. I stood behind the curtain, adjusting my collar for the 5th time. Julian reached over and fixed it in one movement. You are making it worse. I am improving it emotionally. You are folding it inward. That is where the emotion lives. His mouth curved, but the smile did not fully reach his eyes. Beyond the curtain, the audience settled into their seats. Julian looked through the narrow opening near the stage. His shoulders became slightly straighter. I did not need to look. Your parents. He nodded once. Front row. My stomach tightened. Julian noticed. You do not have to worry. That is an unreasonable request. Then worry quietly. I have never done anything quietly. The stage manager motioned toward us. Our turn. The first notes began softly beneath the lights. For months, Julian and I had used music like another competition. Every harmony had been a challenge. Every solo had been proof that one of us deserved more attention than the other. This time, neither of us tried to win. Julian's voice entered first, clean and steady. Then mine joined his. Our voices moved around each other easily, one rising when the other softened, each line making space for the next. When I looked across the stage, Julian was already watching me. Not the audience. Not his parents. Me. By the final note, the auditorium had disappeared. There was only his voice, my voice, and the quiet understanding that we sounded better when neither of us was trying to stand alone. Applause filled the room. Backstage, I released a breath I had apparently been holding since Tuesday. Julian stepped beside me. That went well. I stared at him. That is all. What would you prefer? A dramatic declaration. Possibly tears. I will schedule them. His hand found mine near the edge of the curtain. For one perfect second, everything felt easy. Then Julian's gaze shifted past my shoulder. His parents were approaching through the side aisle. I recognized his mother first, elegant and composed. His father walked beside her, wearing the expression of someone who probably reviewed restaurant menus before arriving. My fingers loosened. I pulled my hand away before Julian had to. The movement was small. His eyes dropped immediately to the empty space between us. It is fine, I murmured, forcing a smile. You do not have to explain anything tonight. Julian looked toward his parents. Then back at me. Something changed in his expression. Not panic. Decision. His hand reached for mine again. This time, he did not hide it beside the curtain or behind a music stand. He linked our fingers together in full view of the hallway. My heart forgot every rhythm we had just practiced. Julian. His grip tightened. I told you that I needed time. His parents moved closer. Julian kept his eyes on me. I did not say I needed forever. His mother noticed our joined hands first. Her gaze softened with surprise. His father's expression remained unreadable, but he did not look away. Julian took one steady breath. Mother. Father. This is Eric. I almost laughed from pure nervousness. We have met. Julian's thumb moved gently across my hand. His voice remained calm, but every word carried more courage than the last. Not properly. Then he looked at me. This is my boyfriend. For 1 second, nobody moved. Julian's mother looked at our joined hands. His father looked directly at Julian. I considered several emergency options. Pretending to faint felt dishonest. Running would require letting go of Julian's hand. That was not happening. His father's expression remained unreadable. Are you serious? The question was calm, but Julian's fingers tightened around mine. He lifted his chin. Yes. His father studied him for a long moment. About Eric? Julian glanced at me. Something warm and steady entered his eyes. This is the most serious decision I have made entirely for myself. My chest tightened. That was possibly the most romantic thing anyone had ever said about me. It was also an alarming amount of responsibility. Julian's mother looked between us, surprise slowly giving way to understanding. Before anyone could speak again, another voice rose a few feet behind Julian's parents. I knew it. I closed my eyes. Of course, my mother had been standing there with a bouquet, listening to everything. She stepped into the hallway carrying a bouquet of flowers and wearing the satisfied expression of someone who had solved a mystery before everyone else. I turned toward her. You knew? Mom handed me the flowers. Eric, friends do not arrive 30 minutes early for pancakes and look at each other like that. I looked at Julian. Julian looked at the floor. A faint color appeared near his ears. Mom smiled at him. You are still welcome for breakfast, by the way. Thank you, Mrs. Carter. I pointed between them. You both could have told me that I was being obvious. Mom tilted her head. Would you have listened? No, but I would have appreciated the opportunity to deny it. Julian's mother covered a small laugh with her hand. The sound loosened something in the hallway. Even Julian's father's expression softened slightly. Mom turned toward his parents and offered her hand. I am Eric's mother. It is nice to finally meet you properly. Julian's mother accepted it warmly. We have heard a great deal about Eric. I looked at Julian. You talk about me? Occasionally. His mother's eyes brightened. Frequently. Julian stared straight ahead. I decided to save that information for later. His father returned his attention to Julian. You understand that this is not a small decision. Julian did not look away. I understand. And you are certain? Yes. The answer came without hesitation. His father gave one slow nod. Then we will discuss it at home. My stomach dropped before Julian's mother gently touched her husband's arm. That sounded more intimidating than necessary. His father considered the comment. I meant that we should talk as a family. She looked at him pointedly. That still sounds intimidating. He exhaled. Eric should join us for dinner on Sunday. I blinked. Dinner? Julian's mother smiled. 7 o'clock, if that works for you. My mind immediately pictured a table longer than my bedroom, 12 forks, and several questions about my future. I tightened my grip on Julian's hand. 7 works. Julian looked at me, quiet surprise crossing his face. I gave him a small smile. Whatever happened Sunday, he would not face it alone. His father nodded once. Good. Mom leaned closer to me. You should wear the blue shirt. I stared at her. This is not the time. It brings out your eyes. Julian's mother laughed again. The tension finally broke. Around us, families continued moving through the hallway, carrying flowers and congratulating performers. Julian still held my hand. This time, neither of us tried to hide it. And when his parents walked beside us toward the lobby, they did not ask us to let go. The morning after the performance, my mother announced Julian's arrival with far too much enthusiasm. Eric, your boyfriend is here. I nearly fell out of bed. Not because Julian was downstairs. That part had become normal. The word boyfriend was the problem. It traveled through the house with the confidence of someone who paid the mortgage. I pulled on a sweatshirt and hurried into the hallway. Mom, the neighbors have not requested a relationship update. Her voice floated up from the kitchen. They might be curious. They are not. They wave at Julian every morning. That is because he drives a car that looks more expensive than their houses. When I reached the kitchen, Julian was already sitting at the table with a cup of coffee and a plate of pancakes. He looked completely comfortable. Too comfortable. His expression carried the quiet satisfaction of someone who had heard my mother's announcement and intended to remember it forever. I pointed at him. Do not enjoy this. Julian lifted his coffee. I have not done anything. Your face has. Mom placed another plate on the table. I like calling him your boyfriend. It is more accurate. I sat across from Julian and reached for the syrup. It is also very loud. You spent most of middle school singing show tunes in the living room. That was artistic development. Julian's mouth curved. Of course. I kicked his shoe beneath the table. His foot remained beside mine. The previous night returned in pieces. Stage lights. Our joined hands. Julian looking at his parents and choosing honesty. His father inviting me to dinner. I had agreed before my nervous system could file an objection. Julian's phone lit up beside his plate. He glanced at the screen and became very still. I watched his expression. What happened? He turned the phone toward me. A message from his mother filled the screen. Dinner Sunday. 7 o'clock. Formal dining room. Below it was a second message. Tell Eric not to worry. We are looking forward to meeting him properly. I stared at the words. The formal dining room? Julian placed the phone down carefully. There are 2 dining rooms. I lowered my fork. Why are there 2 dining rooms? One is smaller. How many people fit in the smaller one? 10. I looked toward Mom. She was pretending not to listen while standing 3 feet away. This feels less like dinner and more like a diplomatic event. Julian's eyes softened. You do not have to come. The humor left my voice. Yes, I do. You agreed last night because everyone was watching. I agreed because you held my hand in front of your parents. His gaze dropped briefly to the table. I continued before fear could make me change the subject. You were scared, and you still chose me. I am not going to disappear because your house has too many forks. Mom turned from the counter. Wear the blue shirt. I sighed. Please stop. Planning my wardrobe. It brings out your eyes. Julian considered me with exaggerated seriousness. She is right. I pointed my fork at him. You are supposed to support me. I am supporting the blue shirt. His phone lit up again. Julian watched me carefully. So, Sunday. I reached beneath the table and found his hand. Sunday. His fingers closed around mine. Then I looked at the pancakes, the coffee, and the boy sitting across from me like he already belonged there. Still, I need a complete diagram of the forks. Julian squeezed my hand once. I will prepare one. For the first time, Sunday did not feel like a test. It felt like the next step. By Sunday afternoon, I had changed shirts 3 times. After changing 3 times, I finally chose the blue shirt. Julian arrived at exactly 6:30, looked me over once, and nodded with quiet approval. Your mother was right. I narrowed my eyes. You are no longer allowed to speak to her without supervision. That seems difficult. She invited me for pancakes. The drive to Julian's house felt much shorter than it should have. That was rude of time. I watched the neighborhood grow quieter, the houses larger, and my confidence considerably smaller. Does your father ever ask guests to leave halfway through dinner? Julian kept his eyes on the road. No. Does he own decorative swords? Yes. I turned toward him. Julian. They are not sharp. That was not comforting. His fingers tightened slightly around the steering wheel. That was when I realized he was nervous too. Before we stepped out of the car, I rested my hand over his. If this goes badly, we leave together. Julian glanced at me. If it becomes uncomfortable, I will drive you home. No. We leave together. Something softened in his expression. You do not have to protect me. I know. I am doing it anyway. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly, but I could still see the nervousness in his eyes. I swallowed and looked at him. Actually, I think I need a little caramel for courage. For 1 second, Julian only stared at me. Then his smile became softer. I think I need something too. He leaned closer. This kiss was not rushed. It was warm, quiet, and familiar, carrying the faint sweetness of caramel and the kind of courage neither of us could find alone. When we parted, Julian rested his forehead lightly against mine. Ready? I breathed out slowly. My heart was still nervous, but my hand was in his. And somehow that was enough. I think I am ready now. Dinner began more quietly than any meal had a right to be. The dining room was elegant, the table was long, and there were enough forks beside my plate to support several separate emergencies. Julian sat beside me. His mother welcomed me warmly. His father watched me with the serious expression of a man reviewing an important contract. For the first 10 minutes, we discussed school, music, college plans, and every other topic capable of making an 18-year-old feel like a job applicant. Then Julian's father placed his silverware down. Both Julian and I became perfectly still. He looked between us and released a slow breath. You can stop looking at me as though I am about to pass sentence. Julian's mother lifted her water glass. They have reasons. His father glanced toward her, then returned his attention to Julian. I know people believe I am difficult. Her eyebrows rose. That is one word. A small laugh escaped me before I could stop it. The tension around the table finally cracked. His father leaned back slightly. I am strict because I know what you are capable of. But I never wanted you to spend your life meeting the expectations of this family while losing yourself. Julian stared at him. His father's expression grew quieter. I know what it feels like to have every decision arranged in advance. My life followed a script written by other people. I do not want that for you. Julian's mother slowly turned her head toward her husband. Darling. His father froze. For the first time, the most intimidating man in the room looked alarmed. Your mother was an exception. She tilted her head, her smile calm but dangerous. An exception? He straightened his jacket with the seriousness of a man trying to survive dinner. She was outside the script. I pressed my lips together. Beside me, Julian lowered his eyes toward his plate, but his shoulders moved with silent laughter. His mother finally smiled. That was a good recovery. His father gave one careful nod, as though he had survived a very dangerous negotiation. Then his gaze returned to Julian. If Eric is your choice, then I respect it. Julian's voice remained steady, but emotion warmed every word. He is. That is enough. His mother reached across the table and touched Julian's hand. Your father notices more than you think. Every performance, every activity, every time you came home looking happier. Julian looked toward his father. The man immediately lifted his glass. Her smile turned toward me. He kept wondering what was making you so happy at school. She paused. Now we know. Beneath the table, Julian found my hand. I linked our fingers together and held on. The hardest obstacle we had imagined was not an obstacle at all. It was only a family learning how to make room for something unexpected. When Julian's father offered me dessert, I smiled. Yes, please. Refusing dessert during my first dinner with my boyfriend's family feels irresponsible. Julian closed his eyes. You did not need to emphasize boyfriend. I was speaking clearly. His mother laughed. Even his father smiled. And under the table, Julian never let go of my hand.